Good afternoon to people that are in the audience as well as people on Zoom. We're so happy to have you all here. This afternoon, we have a real treat. Mark and Libby are here to share their trip of 15 days on the Viking Ocean in the Mediterranean area. They had 9 different stops that they're going to tell us about, and it was a trip of a lifetime, according to them. Libby and Mark will now share a brief look at this remarkable trip that they went on, and they will answer questions throughout the presentation. Please join me in welcoming Libby and Mark.
Thank you.
Yes. Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming to let us share with you.
I'm going to take a seat so that we're on the same level here.
Yeah, 1 foot difference. There you go. So, okay, so this is the trip that we took. It was first planned for 2020, canceled because of COVID. We planned it then for 2021. And though Viking didn't cancel, we canceled it in 2021 and went ahead and we're able to do it in 2022. So we were very happy to have made it finally on this trip. And first of all, I know Charlie's been all over the world, and Anita, you have been many, many places. Have any of the rest of you been to the Mediterranean? You have, yeah. So if you have comments or questions along the way, just like Anita said, just go ahead and let us know. So here we go. Oops. Okay,
We're having technical difficulties.
Yes, Jonathan. Do I need to? Oh, there we go. It worked. Can you see better?
This is good.
Sure.
We can still see you.
There you go.
I'll take this Y Viking. I'll take this Y Viking.
Oh, that's good.
No.
That's good. I know we can make it dark, but I'll make it more.
Quite all right. So why Viking? Well, we know you've seen the ads on television, and it is pretty much exactly like you would imagine it from those ads. It's a wonderful experience. They cater to a demographic that's like us. And, you only have to unpack once, and it takes you to all the places you're going to see.
It's not about the cruising itself. It's about them getting you where you want to go. So before we went, or before we even planned the trip, we got on Viking's site and looked at the different excursions that they offered to see if that would fit with what we wanted. Because I'm skipping ahead for just a moment. Our initial goals were to see these things. Mark has a big interest in ships, so we have to see whatever is available at whatever port we're in. And then, of course, the ruins of these ancient civilizations. It was important to see Mount Etna, the Sistine Chapel, Michelangelo's David, and then our kids had been telling us that we needed to go to Barcelona's La Familia Sagrada. And so we went, and we knew why they told us we needed to go.
And why did we go in October and November? Well, it was an end of the year cruise actually that started in Venice. We didn't join the cruise until Athens, but there were passengers already aboard that came down and visited the Dalmatian coastline in Croatia and parts of Italy there. And then we had this cruise that lasted 15 days, Athens to Barcelona. Some of the passengers were continuing on to South America, and this would wrap up their season. So essentially it was like 3 cruise legs linked together. If you wanted to book them all, you could, but after 15 days, Libby and I were pretty much done. But then we did it again in May. So,
To a new destination.
yes,
Right. I also want to say, we'll come to this again as we go along, but Viking makes you feel like you're not on a ship with 800 or 900 other people. And first of all, a ship with 900 people is way different than a ship with 5,000 people. So they make you feel like you're not with that many people, and they have a lot of small spaces on the ship that you can go to if you want to, and we'll show a few of those along the way. So this was our itinerary, and this is from Viking. So as we said, we started in Athens. We went a day early for 2 reasons. We wanted to be sure that Mark could see the ships that he wanted to see in the harbor there at Piraeus, and then we also wanted to be sure that we made it onto the ship, which was what Linda Oakes told us years ago when she went to Iceland. You don't want to miss the ship. So, and we also, you can see by their site here, there's an open circle on Athens, which means you're there longer. There's an open circle on Florence/Pisa, which means we would have spent 2 nights on the ship there. And we did not have 2 nights in Florence because when we were in Rome, they said that the seas were too rough for us to go to Florence. So we actually spent 2 days in the Rome area. And we also did not get to Sete, Montpelier. I don't know how to say that in French, because seas again. But considering the pace that we set for ourselves, we were okay to have a couple quiet days. I know that many of you are interested in the UNESCO World Heritage Sites, and for me, it was really important that we see as many as possible, and nearly every place that we went was a UNESCO World Heritage Site, so that kind of checking those off the bucket list. The reason that I wrote it all out is because there's trivia nights on the Viking ships, and one night they asked, what does UNESCO stand for? And we're thinking, well, of course we know this, but we didn't get it right. I mean,
got part of it, right?
got part of it right. Okay, so here's where we actually went. And I'll just let you look at that for a minute.
It was a pretty full itinerary.
Mhm.
We're not seeing your screen, Libby, on Zoom.
Okay, I'll get the experts up here.
I can see it. I'm on Zoom.
I can see it on Zoom as well.
This is Mary Jean. I can see it.
It's Helen's. It's Helen's.
I'm gonna leave and try to come back in and see if that does it.
That's a-
Okay.
that's a great idea.
Helen, I had a problem one time too, and it was something about my settings, but if you can't see it now, you can listen to it and then come back later and look at the recording and see it.
You? Okay.
Okay.
Move on.
All right.
Okay, this is my slide. I look for these ships wherever I can find them, whenever I can find them, and some of our trips have provided for that. I like to find one of a kind, last of their kind ships, no matter where. And so I've seen lots of them around the world. This is one of those, one of a kind, last of its kind. It's a relic of World War I. It's been beautifully restored. It's called the Georgios Averof, and it is the ceremonial flagship of the Greek Navy. And when I saw my opportunity to be in Athens to see the Parthenon on the Acropolis, I also saw this opportunity to see this ship. So we can move on.
And we were able to walk through it.
Yes,
So,
it's beautiful on the inside and out. So the next slide, this is a replica. Really neat. It's only about 50 feet away or 150 feet away from the cruiser. This is in their Maritime Museum in the port of Piraeus, which is a district in Athens. I've looked at this on YouTube when there are like several hundred men and women rowing it for a plug piece. It's amazing how fast they got this vessel going, like over 10 knots. And it's really, really a kick. So we can move
It's
on.
called the trireme
Yeah, it's the Olympics.
because
There's 3 banks of oars. They even took it to London aboard a transport ship and used it during the 2000 Olympics in London.
okay, so we're in Athens and we did make it up to the Acropolis to see the Parthenon, though this is called the Erechtheion on the Acropolis of Athens. And I don't have pictures of everything we saw up there, just a few representative slides. So there's one important one. And here's the Parthenon. And you can see that the restorations go on all the time. And you might wonder about the number of people. It was packed. I am going to say we tried to go earlier in that day, and we were told that we could not go because the Chancellor of Germany was coming. And so we had to leave and then go back on that same day. But
So that's when we dashed back down to the harbor of Piraeus so I could see the cruisers. We had to,
you
we
make
had to
it
be
work.
really flexible on our agenda.
So here's more. And again, if anybody has comments or wants to add something that they saw, just jump right in. Okay, so for the next day, this was not something that we had specifically wanted to do, but it was an amazing look at several different sites to a little bit to the west and south of Athens in Greece. So this is the Corinth Canal. And as it says, it's a 3.5 mile waterway that was carved so that they could get from the Ionian Sea to the Aegean Sea. And though it was initially proposed many centuries ago, it was finally finished in 1893. Now it's not big enough for anything except for tourist.
Moderate sized vessels will go through it. You know, some ships can make it because it's like 90 feet wide. It looks like something out of Greek myth, like the Iliad or the Odyssey or Jason and the Argonauts. Perhaps it was used in one of those movies because it looks very familiar, but it is deeper than it looks right here. Like that's 150 feet down roughly. And it's nice.
Okay, so next it was off to the ancient theater of Epidaurus, which is in Epidaurus, Greece. As I say, it's dedicated to the ancient Greek god of medicine, Asclepius, in the 4th century BC. It was thought that they had a hospital nearby, and it was thought that presentations, dramas and comedies would be good for the patients. And so this was specifically made there so that it would help the people that were undergoing some sort of treatment. Again, it's thought to be the most perfect Greek theater with regard to acoustics and aesthetics, and it's still used occasionally. And I don't know if this is me down here.
And just all theaters are like this. Where she's standing, she could speak to me in this tone of voice, and I could hear everything she was saying perfectly.
Okay, then it was off to Mycenae. So we were on our way up to another Acropolis, this one called Mount Zara. As I say, Agamemnon's golden mask was supposedly discovered here. And it was quite a trek up to the top. This is called the Lion Gate. It was erected in the 13th century BC as the entrance to Agamemnon's citadel. And if you look carefully at that keystone area, you see that it's 2 lionesses. It is the sole surviving monumental piece of the Mycenaean sculpture.
And the pathway up to it and through it continues a very steep grade. When it's wet, It is slick and slippery, and it's even kind of slippery as when it's dry because those stones have been rubbed smooth by the sandals and the footwear for centuries.
I think this is a neat reminder for us because you can see in the background the ruins of what this place was once like. And here's a beehive tomb. I don't know if anybody had heard of these, but I had never heard of a beehive tomb. They were used as tombs, but sometimes dwellings or for storage. Any comments, Charlie?
And it was below ground. It was into a hillside.
So it's probably cool, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm. Well, and we don't know what it's like in hot weather because it was really nice when we were there in October and November. I skipped that part of that one slide.
Yes. I didn't know if I was going to return to it or not, but on the why November, it was the end of the season, but it was also remarkably beautiful weather. 80 degrees, 75 degrees, not a really chilly day during that entire time.
And not hot. And we also were not, though there were lots of people, it wasn't horrible. Okay, this is kind of funny, but there were cats everywhere. So Mark had to take his picture.
I couldn't help but make acquaintance with a few of them, and they're all kind of semi-wild, but they just take it easy.
Okay, this is the only picture I took of the beautiful olive trees and orange trees, but you see them everywhere. And it was just beautiful. Okay, here's just one of the pictures of our Viking ship. I think you can see the cleanliness and the craftsmanship. So this is outside the dining room where we would usually eat.
Before you go on.
Okay.
Last plug for the Viking cruise. If you ever decide, this is what you can expect. The ship is elegant, it's comfortable, it's beautiful. It's like being in a library or like a gallery or a museum. Everywhere you go, there's never any crowds anywhere. And it is, they treat everybody like first class passengers. Every room is a balcony. There's no interior staterooms. And you can't really find anything better.
We've now been on 4 Viking cruises. This was our 3rd.
Viking Jupiter.
And all the ocean ships look exactly the same. Yeah. So I wanted to be sure that we got to the Library of Celsus, and here we are. I just thought it was amazing. It was commissioned in the 110s AD and completed somewhat later, but not that much. And we have a couple of pictures looking up.
Remember, this cruise was titled Mediterranean Antiquities. So that was the theme, and almost everything that you would see had to do with archaeology or ancient heritage of the Mediterranean.
So this was damage occurred to the inside and the outside over a period of many, many years, but it was re-erected by archaeologists between 1970 and 1978. And it was a library. Okay. Here's the Great Theater of Ephesus. I don't think we knew we were going to be seeing another big theater like this, but here we are. And again, depending on the source, it says that it could hold between 13,000 and 24,000 people. It was begun in BC and excavated in the 1970s and the 1920s, and it continues to be worked on. And I think you can see those areas that are not completed yet. Okay, so before we left Ephesus, I had a chance to get a good shot of our ship out here. So that's what it looks like. And the port was called Kusadasi. That's what it says on the hillside. Okay, next day we were on to Knossos. This was a highlight for Mark in particular on the island of Crete.
As Libby mentioned, we've been on several of these cruises. The guide that we had that day on Crete was the best that I ever have encountered. She was a woman who is not a scholar, but what she led and what she provided was anthropology, geology, geography, religion, culture, and she did it so smoothly and seamlessly. It was absolutely amazing, and I was overwhelmed by this particular tour that we had, and I'll remember it forever.
So you can see the frescoes. Again, I don't have tons of pictures. I just took a few in each place. But it's so interesting to see these civilizations from so long ago that had this going on. Mark made sure that I knew that we should put in that the most important part of their civilization was the domestication of the bull.
Yes, that was what made that civilization advance, and it was one of the early advanced civilizations. So the training center for young athletes or warriors. There's a connection there. And she pointed out that said, notice the ones below. Their hair isn't as long as the athletes above. Remember Samson, the symbol of strength and virility and manhood. Cut the hair, you cut the you cut their strength. Just kind of set that in there for us to digest. That was what the entire day was like, was full of stuff like that.
So again, bathrooms, toilets, drainage system.
And this was the throne room, which is aligned so that actually equinox and solstice. No, solstice and I wish went blank. In the summer, the solstices come in at the angles, so they can actually, use it as kind of a calendar.
Okay, so this is
This particular
more.
causeway entering into the up to the upper levels of the palace. Notice that one step. There's a bull motif on the mural above that in the columns. The step makes everybody bow if you pass that way in deference to their deity.
So we did have a day at sea in the Ionian Sea. So I have included a few pictures here of some of the parts of the ship. And this is on the top deck. Just one of the spaces on the ship. Another one of the small spaces that we could take advantage of. There were books everywhere that you could borrow. Just grab them. Read them at your will. What?
Telescope.
Yeah, right.
There's a reason for that being there, and we'll get to it in just a little while. And when you see a picture of one of the resident scholars who is on board.
Okay, so our next day, we wanted to see Mount Etna, but we wanted a day off as well. So we went to Taormina on the island of Sicily, and we did have a view of Mount Etna. And decided to have lunch at the Sidewalk Cafe. Local views are always just so much fun. And there were street musicians, and I always have to stop and listen. All right, so back on board.
Gary Fildis from England and an astronomer gave lectures periodically during the entire cruise on all topics and subjects. It's entertaining, and that's what he's employed to do, and that's part of what the Viking cruises offer. They always have a resident scholar or historian One year, we had a British diplomat, his name was Sir Rodney, traveled with Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip at times on their private jet, had stories to tell. A very rich experience for us.
So no casinos.
That's what I was going to say. I mean,
Instead, you get this experience.
yes.
Okay. So this is the next morning. You could see Mount Vesuvius from our room on the ship. And
Those type of
That-
mornings kind of are exciting. You see something that you've heard of all your life, and here you are cruising into the bay, and there it is. And it's like, wow, we're really here.
so Pompeii was one of my must go to destinations. And you can see the details there. We all know about Vesuvius burying Pompeii under 20 feet of ash, and that it was rediscovered in the 17th century. You also, go ahead, Mark.
We have lots of pictures of Pompeii.
Yeah,
'Cause there's a lot to see there. It's a huge site,
it is.
much larger than you might expect.
And you might see, for those of you that haven't cruised, this is what they do. We were with the #2 guide that day, so he had his lollipop up there so we could see where he was. And then we could hear what he had to say to us all the time. Okay, so I'll just go through some of the pictures that we took when we were in Pompeii.
It's easily the size of downtown Overland Park, or maybe a little larger.
Well, I understand there were about 15,000 people that lived in this city.
Actually, I might compare its size closer to like the plaza.
I found this intriguing. They placed marble in between the slabs of the paving stones so that at night the moon would shine and they would be able to see their path even at night.
A glittering walkway.
Yeah. I only have one slide for this. It's pretty upsetting. We've all known about this. Okay, next day, on to Rome. So here's a picture of the Colosseum. All we did was drive by. We didn't go to it because our day was quite full.
We had brief glimpses of a lot of the famous sites in Rome as we drove by, but the destination was the Vatican.
We were there the day they opened the floor. Coliseum. It's amazing.
So the pine cone is everywhere, pagan symbol of fertility. We had a classic Italian lunch, and I knew from reading the books about, oh shoot, what the Italian
Was in
author, Donna Leon. Her books detail the food, the lunches that they would have, the meals that they would have. And it's like, why don't they all weigh 300 pounds? Yeah, so they started this lunch with pasta, and I thought, this is lunch. I had not thought what was going to be happening, so I ate all my pasta. And then comes the pork and the potatoes. And then following that comes the salad. And then comes your tiramisu and your coffee. It was a wonderful experience. So we did get to go to the Vatican, and another thing about going on a cruise, such as with Viking anyway, is that you get skip the line tickets for whatever you signed up for. So you're not going to be waiting to get in. You just get to go in. And this was very important to see the ceilings, in particular in the Vatican. So there's one of them. There's another.
Artwork everywhere,
Oh my gosh.
tapestries, sculptures, statues. It's a museum in itself.
And truth in advertising, I did not take this picture because we couldn't take pictures in the Sistine Chapel, but it was important for me to have it here and in the book that I made.
Even if it was allowed, it wouldn't have been a good picture because unlike our ship, you're this close to everybody, and there were hundreds of people in this room.
And we were asked to be quiet, which was easy to do. Here's more. It's just amazing. Okay, and then next door, so to speak, we saw the present St. Peter's Basilica, which was finished in the 1600s. It was told to us that it's about 2 football fields in length.
That's 576 feet to the other end.
And I
It's
have to say,
enormous.
I'm sorry, we are not Catholic, but going to the Vatican, going to those museums, going to St. Peter's Basilica, is just a part of history that we wanted to see. And I have to say that whenever the Pope, this Pope I like, and whenever the Pope is there and he goes into the St. Peter's Basilica, I always get a little thrill because you can recognize the things that you saw when you were there. And of course, there in the Basilica is the Pietà by Michelangelo. It's behind glass now. That's why it looks like it does.
Yeah, a person attacked it with a hammer one time, 30, 40 years ago.
I did not take this picture either, but I wanted a picture that included all of the statues. And the only way to do it was to be on top. So we were here. We did see the Swiss Guards. And the next day was unscheduled to be in that port, as I said earlier, but we spent the day ourselves in the port city, which is Civitavecchia. And I thought that it was interesting that the statue would be there.
And in that it had a beach, I was able to put my foot
Yes.
into the Mediterranean, which is not really that easy when you're aboard a ship, but here I did it, and water was kind of warm in November.
Just a local view in Civitavecchia. Then it was on to Florence. And I don't know how many of you watched that Medici series that was on, I think it was Netflix a few years ago, that told us all about the real differences that the Medici made. But we had watched that, and it was great to be in Florence and to see what that family had accomplished.
Call your attention to the second paragraph there.
Diplomats, patrons of the arts, 4 popes and 2 queens. And they formed the largest bank in Europe, including branch banks, and they were called the godfathers of the Renaissance. This was a must for me, Michelangelo's David. I'm looking up as I'm taking this because the base of it is taller than Mark is.
It's 9 feet.
Yeah.
And you mentioned, go ahead and talk about the hands,
Well, they can see that too.
the oversized hands.
Mm-hmm. And in Florence, Brunelleschi's Duomo,
This cathedral is, I was only vaguely aware of it, not even by name, but I was aware of this cathedral dome when you'd see photos of Florence. It's all marble. It's enormous. I think it's third largest in the world. St. Paul's is second. St. Peter's is first. They mentioned this on our tour. Our guide said third largest dome. Well, when you approach it from a distance, it's a dome. It's a cathedral. When you get next to it, then you realize how small you are, relatively speaking, to the size of this structure, and it is astonishingly large.
And I
Beautiful.
took most of my pictures up so that you wouldn't necessarily see the crowds, but occasionally you'll see some heads and then you'll have the idea of how big it is compared to us humans. So there's the octagonal baptistry of St. John. And I didn't know until recently that until 1935 was the only place where Florentines were baptized. Again, notice the marble. It's just amazing.
On this side of the next one, on this side, they were cleaning the marble, so it's green and red and white. It's really striking to see. Cameras can't do justice to it, especially when we're walking, you're moving along, and if the light is not cooperating, but it's absolutely beautiful. And they were steam cleaning or using some process to take the years and decades and maybe centuries of grime off. So when it's done, it'll be kind of radiant.
And you've probably heard of the Ponte Vecchio, the bridge across the Arno, where there are all sorts of shops, and we did walk through it. The shops are still there. There were statues everywhere, and I just kept snapping pictures, and when I would see the names below them, there were just several that caught my eye, and so you're seeing just a couple of these. But I decided to take a picture of Machiavelli and of Dante, because they are so significant.
There are a number of things that can interfere with the cruise, like stormy weather at sea, where you sit in port in the calm. We were supposed to spend like 2 days in this region. And one of our tours that was canceled was we were going to go to a marble quarry. There's marble quarries are around Florence, and that's why so much of Florence is made out of marble.
And as we were headed back to our bus, I just thought that this was really fun, that you've got the old that you've been looking at, and yet here's the modern day. There were rowers on the Arno. Okay, next it was on to Monaco, and we weren't so excited about going there.
Libby and I have similar tastes and values, and that's why we get along. I did not expect to enjoy Monaco. It was like the least exciting port of call on our cruise for me. And it was remarkably beautiful and just a wonderful place to visit. It was a Sunday, so it was quieter, but this is a place that is eye candy and pleasant.
And it is surrounded by France on the land completely, and you can see Italy 10 miles away.
It is just 1 square mile.
Less than 1 square mile.
Yes.
Yeah. So, yeah, this is what it looked like at night. There was an amusement park situation going on down here. So it was lots of laughter and noise.
And the water of the Mediterranean at the base of the cliffs, what is it, the Côte d'Azur?
Mm-hmm.
Remarkably turquoise blue and clear. You can see depth, and there's no murkiness at all.
And you can see just a few of the yachts that were around. They were prevalent. We also, because it was a Sunday, we saw people out learning how to sail on small sailboats. Not something that you'd think you'd see at Monaco, and it was really kind of idyllic. Okay, our next day was Marseille, and we decided not to do a big tour, but to just be there. And so we were next to the fishers and their wares. I also had not realized how long Marseille had been there and how important it has been for all these years for trading. See, this is the only picture from Marseille. Okay, then on to Barcelona. And again, we are not Catholics, but this was an important piece to see. And it is the largest Catholic church in the world. They are consistently working on it. I don't know if they'll ever get done.
Are you all familiar with the Sagrada Familia? Anybody who is not? Everywhere you look, you see more. And most of the artwork is on the outside, and it just forms structure. It looks like it's emerging from the earth. And I was looking forward to seeing this very much because I knew that this is a spectacular structure, but it exceeded my expectations. I can't even express it in words. I walked around picking my jaw off of the ground every time it hit. It's an amazing, amazing building.
And because so many architects and sculptors have been involved in this over the many, many years, you see a lot of different kind of takes on things. In a moment, you'll see one that's really modern, and then there's others that are not at all. They represent scenes in the Bible, all of these.
It's the life
Scenes.
of Christ is depicted on this church.
Everywhere on the outside.
Is it repair work or is it continue to add?
Still continuing.
Well,
There's
he asked if it was repair work too. Is that?
No, I think it's relatively young.
Could you repeat the question?
Oh,
Is
that's right.
it repair work that is going on, or is it new construction? It's mostly new construction. There was scaffolding and plastic sheeting on one end. The Sagrada Familia will extend a block or two, and they're going to have to take down some neighborhood buildings because the design is larger than what the current footprint will allow. They'll have 12 spires for the
18.
8 spires, 18 spires total. 12 apostles plus the others, and gosh, it's beautiful.
There's supposed to be a celebration.
It's supposed to be a celebration, Marilyn says. I think so. A celebration. Yeah. So here's one of the more modern areas.
The crucifixion side of the Sagrada Familia, Sacred Family, Sagrada Familia. It's done modernist deliberately. So as brutal and as disturbing as the crucifixion is, did it, the sculptors did it in a modernist way.
So this is just one of them. I could have taken tons and tons of pictures. This kind of is the representation. And then inside, Gaudi.
It's like a forest of trees.
Right. He didn't want any straight lines. All of the columns represent sycamore trees.
The stained glass in the west will look like a sunset because it's all orange and yellows and so on. In the morning, on the other side, it's in greens and blues. So there's not exactly symmetry. It's a living, breathing, organic experience.
And we didn't know we were going here, but we were very glad we did. This is called Gould Park, named for Antoni Gaudi's patron. And he started off by making everything out of discarded ceramic pieces. again with nature as his inspiration, as in La Sagrada Familia. It's an amazing park. You can see some of the mosaics.
And it has a funness to it, almost like a fairy tale quality. There's
Almost Disney-like sometimes.
well, I was getting to that. Maybe stealing my thunder here. Next slide. There's one building that has broken teacups that form its roof. And I got this iconic lizard, but the longer I was there, and I didn't know what to expect. It started to look familiar, and it almost has that original Disneyland characteristic to it. And I'm just wondering if the artist that Disney was, if he'd been to Barcelona and he'd seen this and it stuck in his mind and formed one part of inspiration for what became Disneyland.
This is two different pictures, if it's hard to see, but you can see a close-up of some of the mosaics and then the big structure there. This is Gaudi's famous apartment building, very unique. And then, of course, we ended our trip at the Barcelona Maritime Museum to see what Mark wanted to see.
This is a replica galley, a war galley representing the 17th century. It was built in 1970. It's the featured piece in this maritime museum, and they have ship models and all kinds of other watercraft in there, but this is a work of art. It is as beautiful as anything that I saw in any gallery. And so I was really looking forward to seeing this. Next slide. One more shot.
You want me to go back?
Yeah. How you get up onto the ship through that staircase that's dangling right at waterline. And I took a bunch of other pictures. In the gallery were some young people making sails. And the final slide is who these young people were. Back in the early part of this century, I was watching this replica ship being built in Sweden. It's called the Gothenburg. It's a East Indiaman. I watched from the time they started putting the first frames up and completing the interior and putting the planks on, the launching. And then it sailed from Gothenburg, Sweden, all the way to Shanghai with young training crews, kids who were in their college age, basically, on various legs that came down the European coast over to Brazil, around the Cape of Good Hope and everything. I think it was just days before we left, or it was while we were on our way over. I saw something on the many Facebook sites that I see in groups. It was going to be in Barcelona. So it was one of those serendipitous occasions when a ship I've been admiring for years just happened to be there. And so it ended my cruise experience on a very positive note.
And with that, we are done. Anybody has questions or comments, that'd be great.
We still have a few minutes if there are any questions or comments. That was incredible. One of the best that I've ever seen, and I've seen a lot. And you did a marvelous job. Beautiful pictures, understanding of history, gorgeous descriptions. Let's give them a wonderful hand. Yeah.
Thanks.
I would strongly recommend you write a book. I'm always into book writing, and then you can go across the United States and sign it and sell it. Yeah, but
if we're really serious about this, we could approach Viking and become one of their resident
that's right.
promoters, is who these people really are.
Yeah.
They get a free cruise, but that's the way they work their cruise, is by being, a resident historian or literist or.
There was also a resident historian.
Yeah.
That we did not have a picture of.
Yeah, yeah. One of the things I want to say, Mark, and this is just curiosity, where did you get your interest in ships and boats?
It was born probably with seeing the 10 Commandments. No, not the Ten Commandments. Ben-Hur, when I was
Okay.
about age 5. The sea battle scene fascinated me. And I have been intrigued with maritime design ships since I was a child.
And I will say that Mark is an historian. He worked for the National Archives as an archivist all of his working years.
Okay, I wanted to get to where you obviously have a real strong understanding and feel for history, both of you, and you wonderful to share it with us. And I wanted to also acknowledge the technicians here that helped us with all this. Marilyn Garnes, who's our new technician. Thank you so much, Marilyn. And then our former technician, Jonathan, thank you for showing up and helping us, and his lovely wife, Joan. But we always appreciate people coming, and it will be through Marilyn's marvelous help. This will be put up for everybody to watch again and again. So anybody have any final questions that?
I had some questions in the chat. Why were you not excited to go to Monaco?
Well, we're not into casinos or dancing or opulent, fancy jet-setting dress. So that's what we thought we would encounter in
And gambling. We're not into gambling.
casinos.
But I mean, just the city itself, that there was things to see in there, right? Without all of those other things.
Yes.
We were taken to the palace, Prince Albert's palace, and
We
they had
watched
a
the changing of
the guards, and it was delightful. And well, they used to talk about Princess Grace, that she had serenity. Well, it was kind of a serene experience in Monaco. We went through the church on a Sunday morning before services that Princess Grace and Prince Rainier were married in. Just things like, she's buried there, he's buried there.
And I see that someone has written on the chat, was there turbulence on the ship being on the Mediterranean? I would say no. I am really affected by motion. And so I don't do a lot of these kinds of things, but it was important enough for me to go on this trip because of the way that Viking presents everything. The only 2 rough days were the days when we couldn't go on to the next port, and we weren't in the middle of the turbulence because we were in the safe port.
I need to segue from what Libby just mentioned about the sea state that we encountered in the Mediterranean. Part of our route took us between Sicily and the mainland of Italy. We went through Scylla and Charybdis, the mythical whirlpool from the ancient antiquities, where swallowed ships, the waters, the collision of the Adriatic Sea. Yes, Adriatic and the sea to the north by Sardinia comes together there. And so I was out on the prow of the ship with my camera as we went through Scylla and Charybdis, which I just thought was amazing to go through it aboard a vessel. Didn't feel any turbulence, but the waters were just churning through there, and it was amazing to see.